Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Who's That Author? His award-winning first novel, Flowers for Algernon, has never gone out of print in hardcovers and in paperback. It has been widely translated and is studied in schools, colleges, and around the world. In April 1995, Harcourt Brace republished it in the Harcourt Brace Modern Classic Series. At this time, it was released by Parrot Audiobooks, narrated by the author himself on cassette tapes. Today, we welcome Daniel Keyes.
Hello, sir. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Mr. Keyes, when and where were you born?
Well, thanks. It's a pleasure for you to have me here today. Well, to answer your first question, I was born in New York on August 9th, 1927, and I currently live in South Florida.
Tell us about some adventures you had early on.
Well, I had an interesting life growing up. At the age of 17, I joined the U.S. Maritime Service as a crew as a ship's purser, and I quickly found out that that didn't work. It didn't last long, and I returned to Brooklyn College and finished a degree in psychology, earning my bachelor's. Shortly after, I got hired as a fiction writer for a magazine called the Marvel Science Fiction.
Is it true that you left a position as a fiction editor to become a fashion photographer?
Yes, it's true. I left the position as an editor at the magazine to pursue a hobby that I love, photography.
What made you return to college?
Well, I tell you, a career in photography really wasn't for me, especially when I had kids. I had 3 kids and the business just wasn't for me anymore. I returned to college and I earned a license to teach. I actually started to teach English at my alma mater in Brooklyn. And I tell you, every day I would travel to and from school on the subways, and I would have a lot of thoughts going through my head, and on the weekends I began writing. I began writing again, and I began submitting some short stories to an old friend I had as an editor.
What made you write Flowers for Algernon? And isn't it true it was first published as a short story?
Well, that's a good question. I first got the idea to write Flowers for Algernon as I was sitting on the ship as the purser back when I was in the U.S. Maritime Service, and I thought to myself, what would happen if it were possible to increase human intelligence? And time went by and things happened, and I started different careers, and I went back and I got my teaching license, and I started to teach in Brooklyn, where I was teaching a class of slow learners. And one day I was sitting in class and the bell rang and all the kids darted out of class, but there was one boy who sat in the back of the class after everyone had left and had raised his hand, and he said, "Mr. Keyes," he said, "isn't this a class for dummies?" And I tell you, I was taken away by it, and I said, "No," I said, "this is a class for slow learners." And he said, "Mr. Keyes, I want to be smart. I want to be smart, and at the end of this quarter, I want to be in the regular class with all the others." And I was taken away by it. I got punched in the gut by a kid asking me this question. I thought to myself, I never thought, that a person with low intelligence would want to be smart. And I went home and I reflected back on all my notes, what would happen, if it were possible to increase human intelligence, and it just clicked. It just clicked. And as I was writing other short stories at the time, I got in contact with one of my publishers from a magazine, and yes, I actually had written it as a short story, and it got published in the magazine, and it became a huge hit, and I refined it, and I actually published it, and it all came together. My thoughts flowed on paper. They came out right through my fingertips, and it all came together as Charlie wanting to become smart, Yeah.
And thank you, Mr. Keys.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure here today. It was a pleasure for me to share with you my short story of my life's events and challenges and such like that. And I'm sure I'll be here again. Thank you, Mr. Davis, and thank you.
Keys has done 4 book tours, including one in Tokyo, and has appeared on numerous television shows, such as The Today Show, Regis and Kathy, 2020, Sonia, and Larry King Live, twice. He has also lectured at more than 60 universities across the country. For a schedule of any more of his appearances, please check at the bottom of our webpage at www.whoisthatauthor.net. Thank you again, Mr. Keys, and for Who's That Author, I'm Dustin Davis. Have a good night.